Can we talk about the police commissioner of New York who's now in jail?
What about him?
Well, I think that conservatives and right mind, not just right, political right, but people who care about, crime and punishment, law and order, and justice should be gravely offended by the fact that our former corrections commissioner, our former police commissioner, a man who stood by the side of Rudy Giuliani during 9/11, is being his rights are being trampled, in my opinion, by the federal U.S. attorney up in Westchester County, who has just revoked Bernie's bail and put him in jail with no bail on the behind this corruption charge. You know, Bernie, just give people a quick background. He pled guilty to 2 state charges that he took underpriced renovation work on his Bronx apartment.
Let me interrupt you a second, because we're coming up to a hard break. Would you be willing to call back in about 10 minutes?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So more Geraldo Rivera defending Bernie Kerik coming up. It is 5 minutes after the hour here in the Imus Morning program on the radio all over the country and on the Fox Business Network. 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Monday through Friday. We were talking with Geraldo Rivera. We're going to do the news a little bit. There's not a lot going on. It's more interesting what Geraldo was talking about. Talking about Bernie Kerik, who's a former... What was he, Geraldo?
Police commissioner and corrections commissioner.
Now, didn't he do a bunch of icky stuff or no?
Well, he may have, but my point is that will be tried by, a jury. There'll be a defense attorney and a prosecutor. They'll present the case, and that will be it. But what I am lamenting right now, Don, is the fact that this federal judge up there, this guy Stephen Robinson, seems to have such a thing up his behind about Bernie that he has revoked Commissioner Kerik's bail pending trial, and the reason he did that is he says that Bernie Kerik is trying to taint the jury pool by having some of the legal papers leaked that express his defense in a corruption case. Basically, the case against him is that some mob-connected guys did some work in his apartment for less than market rates.
Right.
And if that's true, it's true. And he's already pled guilty in state court to 2 misdemeanors, the same facts. So the Fed still had it for him, so they still went after him, the same case. And now they've revoked his bail. They put him behind bars. This is Bernie Kerik, who was with Rudy Giuliani on 9/11. So first of all, the judge says that Bernie Kerik's not allowed to mention 9/11. He's not allowed to mention the fact that he was in Baghdad setting up the internal police force when it was really grim there in 2003. He's been a patriot. He was the reason he got into trouble in the first place is in 2004 he was selected to be the successor to Tom Ridge at the Department of Homeland Security. So it was in that vetting process this mob stuff came up. But my point is, you've never had a federal judge ever lambasting a defendant. The judge says that his fear is that Bernie Kerik is trying to taint the jury pool, and yet here's this federal judge, this guy Robinson, who goes after Kerik from the bench, saying he's a sleazebag, he's trying to taint the jury, he's arrogant, he's this, that, and the other thing. It seems to me that the federal judge and the U.S. Attorney's Office spending tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to prosecute and persecute this guy, they're the ones who are tainting the jury pool. And I just think that we're letting a hero go down with a whimper, not even allowed to defend himself. I think it's really raw. It's really low down.
Well, didn't he also do something where, didn't he have some, I forget the woman's name, the publisher,
Judith Reagan.
Yeah, didn't he have some sort of relationship with her?
Yeah, but that when she published his autobiography.
Right.
And, Bernie has a very colorful background. His mom was a hooker, I think. He came up from the streets. I think he was, no dad around. He worked his way, became a cop, became a corrections officer, worked his way up to the top of law enforcement. And in that process, in writing that book, I guess he and Judith Reagan had something going on, but that's not a crime.
Oh, no. I mean, love happens in all kinds of places. So. And apparently it happened.
I mean, isn't it? It stinks. I mean, you've never heard murderers get bail, and Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, who put his life on the line in Iraq, not to mention Ground Zero, has his bail revoked by a federal judge who's, in my view, being a renegade. He's meting out one kind of justice for regular defendants and a very specific, much more punitive kind of justice for a guy who should deserve a little a little slack once in a while, particularly in that he has already pled guilty to these charges in state court.
Well, somebody has done a good job at creating this perception of Bernie as being some kind of creep. So, I mean, it's like I haven't followed the case as closely as you have or others, and which is why I ask you, well, didn't he do something icky? Well, meaning that, speaking to your point, and you have a good point, that somebody has created this perception of Commissioner Kerik as being, somebody who's done some sort of awful thing, and we don't know any of that.
And, Bernie's got one of those, bulldog faces with the mustache that, he looks like a bad guy. But, he's a frequent guest on my program. I met him, it's funny, I never met him when he was a police commissioner. I met him in Iraq, and I saw him in action on the rooftops of Baghdad when people were really shooting at people on the rooftops of Baghdad. Yeah. And, he stood right by Giuliani's side. I mean, you got to remember how shaky New York was right after 9/11. He was like a rock then, and the reason he was selected, unfortunately for him and everybody else, to be Homeland Security Director was he had that rock image. But then it just seems to me that now that he has fallen, now that they had their nose out of joint because the state court gave him 2 misdemeanors and no jail time on the corruption charge, so the feds went after him.
I wonder if it's a way.
I'm just saying corruption is corruption. You go after a guy, but I think that he is really getting it. He's getting it in the nines in a way that's very unseemly.
I wonder if it's a way that somebody wants to get even with Giuliani for some reason.
That's a very good theory, and I think that that's part of it. I think that this is part of the process of defaming Rudy Giuliani. The more Kerik looks like the heavy, the worse Giuliani looks in terms of the character of the people that he surrounds himself with. And I just have to say that in my experience with Bernie Kerik, and most of it is wartime stuff, and also as a frequent guest on my program, he's an honorable man. He is truly contrite over the relatively petty ante. It was a $200,000 job. He paid $55,000 for it or something like that. That's a crime. I understand that. He violated the public trust and all the rest of it. But you don't revoke a guy's bail. He never raped anybody. He never murdered anybody. He never stuck up a bank. He never robbed from orphans and widows. I mean, to revoke his bail and put him in pending trial, I think is outrageous. And the fact that no one is speaking up for him is a function of the fact that everybody is so afraid to go near him for fear of being, tainted by this, corruption, or you're in the bag for Giuliani or whatever. And I think it's very, very, I'm starting a movement this weekend on my show, Free Bernie Kerik.
Okay.
The last time I did that was Free Al Sharpton when he was in jail for the Vieques protest down in Puerto Rico, which I favored. It was Free Al Sharpton then. Now it's Free Bernie Kerik. Let him have a fair trial.
Are we going to have T-shirts and stuff?
If I have to, I will. If I'm a one-man protest, I'm going to stand in front of that damn Westchester federal court. But this guy Robinson has to recuse himself. This federal judge. Can you imagine now a guy who has revoked a defendant's bail and excoriated the defendant from the bench is now going to preside over the corruption trial in some kind of fairness? I mean, give me a break. That can never happen. They have to get rid of this judge and get a new judge in there and start all over again.
Good for you. I'm happy to see that the fire and the passion is still burning.
Oh, it is so transparently unfair to me. It's so easy in this day and age to go along with what's popular. And I would love to get some of my colleagues behind me on this one because Bernie deserves a fair trial just like everybody else.